Okay, hello everyone. We've got this is kind of part 3 of a video that we've been doing with an angel. Now, angels do exist, and they haven't all got white wings and wear white dresses like you see in the movies and all the textbooks. Angels walk among us, but what are angels? Well, they're obviously very powerful, and they're underestimated. They can go through life and come out at the other end. They can go through hell, but they're still shining at the end of the day. And that's exactly what this angel. She's not going to like me saying that, but I don't care because it's the truth. Brittany. And here's Brittany. We're going to have a chat with her. Hiya, Brittany. I've just noticed we've both got walls at the back of our.
We do.
We do.
Brick.
Mine's not real, by the way. It looks real, but it's
Oh,
not.
mine.
Yours is it? Is it real?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
real.
you're showing off now. Anyway, but there you go. And I've got all these plants, very tropical. Anyways, it's not about decor. We're going to go into something very deep. So, guys, what I need you to make you aware of this video may be distressing. Well, it will be distressing. So, if you're of a certain age, please turn it off right now. This is the third part of what Brittany's story is. I'm just going to go a bit of an overview of what Brittany's been through. When she first come on to this podcast with us, she was talking about her experience and what happened to her. So I'm just going to sort of give a short version of events. If you want to know more information or the full story, go back and watch the videos. I'll put the links in the description below, but be aware they're very graphic and upsetting. So, Brittany, you were a professional, you were in the armed forces, you were high ranking, and you had degrees in psychology, different levels of the mind and things like that. You really knew how the brain worked. You were intelligent, you are intelligent, and unfortunately circumstances arise that you ended up homeless. Again, watch the other videos to find out what happened. And whilst you were homeless, you were approached by a stranger who kidnapped you and at gunpoint and attacked you, assaulted you, and it was horrific. And you had a bit of a mental breakdown, which obviously is reasonable because you were in shock. What happened to you? But in America, it's not like the UK. The police didn't do what they were supposed to do, and they didn't realise that this poor woman, this victim at the time, was having an anxiety trauma event, an experience, and they sort of brushed her off and they didn't help her. Then another guy saw you and he did help you. But again, the trauma of what happened to you created and caused you to have a huge breakdown. And again, now you'd have to watch the other videos to really get an insight into what happened. But the story it's shocking. And in this part of the video, we're going to talk about that experience that you had in more detail and the outcome of it and how you tried to not change the law, but challenge the police's perception of mental health because of what you experienced, because they couldn't see that you were having a trauma-based episode. Again, we're going to get into this in further detail. So, right, I'm waffling on, but it's not about me. This is about Brittany. So she's going to share her story with you now. So get ready for this. This is going to be a big one. And we're going to find out exactly what happened starting right now.
Analyzing the news.
Right, like I say, in this video, it's not edited at all. Everything you see is all done in one take. Everything you're about to hear for the first time is the first time I'm hearing it as well. So what Brittany's about to say is new to me as well. I've got a basic idea of what she's going to say, but I don't know the depths of detail she's going to go into. But I'm sure it's going to be fascinating, but at the same time, very upsetting. So, Brittany, it's over to you. So tell me what happened. So I know that you actually got sectioned, is that right? Because of a
Yeah,
trauma-induced psychosis.
right. So right. So after my assault, I went into a trauma-induced psychosis, and I ended up being arrested while in a trauma-induced psychosis. And which I, kind of explain in part two the details of all of that. So I had gone to jail. I spent, about 4.5 months in jail, and about 3 of those months I was in psychosis still, just thinking that people were after me, going to do harm to me, and just suffering some pretty wild and far out there delusions. But that was my reality at that time. So, um, I had gotten a court appointed attorney, and I had asked him several times to get my evidence from the police reports from my assaults. And I had also been ED to a mental health facility for 9 days prior to my arrest, because I was in psychosis after my second assault. And so I wanted him to get those records because I knew they'd drawn blood when I went in and got admitted, and I knew they would show I didn't have any drugs in my system, which would prove that I was really in a trauma-induced psychosis, and it wasn't any sort of drug-induced psychosis that I was in. But he failed to do that. He didn't get any of that evidence. Showed up with nothing but a deal from the DA, and it was sign this. Or you can, face up to 8 years in prison, because I ended up being charged with disturbing the peace, which, I was in psychosis, so of course I'm disturbing the peace.
Yeah.
A trespassing charge, and then once the police tried to arrest me, my fight or flight had kicked in, and I thought they were actually trying to kill me, and I was screaming for, good police to come help and all of this. So, I felt like, I was devastated when I had to sign that. I'd never been in any trouble like that before. And, when you're looking at 8 years in prison and somebody's telling you this, it's like, and you've sat in jail for over 4 months, and they're like, you can sign this and get out today. And your attorney has none of your evidence. So you're just like, well, what's the judge going to do? Take my word for it? Like, that's not the way the court of law works. And so I signed it, and it killed me to sign that piece of paper. So I got discharged that night, and, it was kind of like the night that I, kind of made a promise to God that I would do everything I could to make sure that nothing like that ever happened to anybody else. So I get out.
Can I just,
go ahead.
Sorry, love. Can I just point out as well, just for the audience, that trauma-induced psychosis, just a little overview of it. It's chronic mental state where extreme stress or traumatic events such as abuse, accidents, or loss trigger hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and your thinking's not right. Everything's a bit discombobulated. You don't know where you are. You can hear these voices. So this is something you were going through constantly, and you were trying to tell people, listen, something's happened to me. But because you couldn't articulate, you couldn't get the words out because this trauma-induced psychosis had kicked in, people didn't know how to take this. They thought, is she crackers? Ignorance, basically. But
Right.
what was happening, you were experiencing that. And when you went to these therapeutic meetings with other people who were suffering from similar things, it was frustrating you because you came from that background. You held these meetings, and now you're on the other side, which was frustrating you even more because you felt
Right.
like people weren't listening. And the things that they were suggesting to you, like, oh, it's this and that and the other. You're like, no, you're not listening. You're treating me like this. I know more about the psychology game than you do. And it was frustrating for you, which was aggravating this trauma, making it even worse because you felt like no one
Right.
was listening. Is that right?
Yes. So yeah, it kind of like did not work in my favor. On certain, in other areas it did, throughout that journey, but in that instance it did not help me at all because I ended up being released from that mental health facility earlier than I should have been because I was in this line of work before this happened to me, and I worked in mental health, and I was, going to school, to get my psych degree and all this other stuff. And so it was like, in my mind, it was like, when these people would basically try to tell me that I was crazy, I didn't believe them, because I'm like, I can't be crazy. Like, I help people like this, you know what I mean? Like, I work in this field and this is what I do. Like, I can't be, I can't go nuts. You're crazy. And so, and then in the group settings, like you said, so when they would ask the questions, like on, basically like, what should you do? And this happens and it's like, I knew all the answers because I used to teach those same groups. So, and then when I would try to tell other people that I worked in mental health because I was in psychosis, they just thought that was a part of my psychosis, me saying that I was in mental health. So it was a nightmare.
That's crazy, isn't it? It must be so frustrating.
A lot of trauma-induced psychosis in war vets, too, even. It's very common, that they experience things like that. But, it's just not something that people, are really educated on. And it's like some of them, I feel like even when you do go to get help, sometimes you don't really get the help you need because you just feel like you're not being heard.
Did you find as well, Brittany? Oh, I don't know if that was my microphone. Did you find as well that because you were so elite at what you did, you were really good at what you did? Because you were obviously in the forces as well, so you're dealing with this all the time. Did you feel that the people who were so-called practitioners in this industry, you're sort of, more than they do, and almost they're not as experienced as you, so when they're trying to give insight and knowledge to you, you're like, mate, I know more than you do, so
it was frustrating. It was
yeah.
definitely frustrating. And then it was like after all that happened to me and I was arrested, I thought like I had multiple college degrees and I was on my fifth one when this happened. And it was like I thought my life, my career, everything I'd worked for was over now. Like it was just no one's gonna hire you. And I remember I had this moment when I was, in jail and incarcerated. It was after I had kind of regained my sanity back for a bit. And, I'm sitting here thinking about like, I'm never going to get my dream because I wanted to do forensic psychology. Like, I told you, before, ironically. Um, so I always pictured myself working in the prison system and doing prison reform before all this happened. And so it's like I was sitting there one day and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm never going to get that dream of working in a prison system someday. Like, everything's done. And I had this moment where I was like, you know what? And I knew that, like, this was my passion. This is what I wanted to do with my life. And before all of this, and I had this moment where I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm in a jail right now. I mean, you're here now. So, and you know how to help people. And this may be like the only chance you have to do it. And it doesn't matter that, you haven't, gotten your doctorate yet or whatever. Like, I knew I could help people. And so it was like, in a weird way, it was like, I'm going to use the time I have here. And like, it was like I could still accomplish my dream in a way, not in the way I'd imagined, but in a small way. Like, I could still make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I just started helping the girls in there.
So talk me through that. So in America, did you share? I imagine you share a cell with other, is that what they call it, inmates? Is that what they call
Well,
it?
I didn't because I was in psychosis. So
Yeah.
I was actually even on solitary. Like they kept me on general population, but I was like, so I was alone in mine. And so I was on 23-hour a day lockdown for
Yeah.
like over 30 days. And that was just like the worst thing, like the psychological torture of being in that jail and what the cops. It was in like the worst hell you could imagine. Like, and it was just an endless loop because you have no control where your mind takes you, when you're in that.
So, Brittany, can we, if you would, because it'll make it easier for you, try and sort of like separate yourself. So, like we're talking about the old Brittany, because if you know this anyway, because if you go there, it's going to be hard, and you probably wouldn't even be able to speak about it because, like you said, it's very traumatic. So let's look at the old Brittany like a third person. So there's me and you. We're talking about the old Brittany because now we're going to get a clearer picture. So why do you think why did they put someone in that much confinement for that long? Why is that? Because I can't see how that would help them. What's the reasoning behind that they're locked away for so long? Why would you say?
I think it just made it easier for them to deal with me, honestly.
And would
I'm
you
just
and would you
that they don't.
say again? We'll do it as the third person. Would you say at the time the old Brittany, was she erratic, and then they had to do that because she was unstable from their perception?
Yeah, I remember I told you about. I
Yeah,
thought my shampoo was poisoned at
yeah,
one time.
yeah,
My skin had just barely touched the bottle, and I could physically feel it. Like I started
yeah,
panicking, ran out of the shower with a towel, and I was like begging them to call for help and yelling. And I could feel it going physically through my arm,
yeah,
like in my chest. And it lasted for weeks, which was crazy. But that's what, like, really, after I came out of it, like, I will never forget. Like, for the brain to be that powerful, like, I even working in mental health, like, I never realized how powerful your brain is until I went through all that.
oh, absolutely.
But I thought they were sending chemicals through my air vents. I thought I was a Disney princess at one time. I go into more details about like more of those kinds of experiences I had while I was in there, but yeah, it was bad.
But looking back at it, if you could look back, what do you think the best practice? What should they have done to sort of calm that anxiety, that trepidation? Trepidation, if anyone doesn't know, means the fear of something bad's going to happen. But that's what anxiety is, when you constantly think something's happening. There's poison in the shampoo. They're listening to me. They're going to get me. Constantly highly alert that something bad's going to happen. Obviously, what they're doing ain't working because it's making it worse.
Right.
What do you think they should have done? How should they approach it just to sort of calm your psychological nervous system down?
Well, here's the thing. They never should have arrested me. They should have taken me to a hospital
Mm,
or a mental health facility, like a crisis unit somewhere. Like I never should have been there to begin with. And I saw so many people there banging their heads against the walls and doing all sorts of crazy things, just like I was. I wasn't the only one in there with mental health issues. There were people that seriously needed to be stabilized and get help and care. And they were being just tortured the same way that I was, but on like, so, that's why I feel like we need more mental health professionals working within our jails and prisons because, you need them on
mm,
staff, because as common as it is that they get locked up, and a lot of times it's for like minor charges and, trespassing, disturbing the peace, things
mm.
like that, Um, and That's why they need them there on staff to go handle those people. They had one jail counselor there, but she was the only jail counselor for the entire jail. So I was getting to see her like for sessions, but I mean, she wasn't a psychiatrist. She couldn't administer any type of medication. And a lot of times in situations like that, what you do is you medicate people, you knock them out. You know what I mean? Like when they're, they get a shot of Haldol or whatever, to bring them back down. And so, I mean, but that's not an option in there. Like that's not. And they had me on no medications while I was in there, and it was like I was freaking out, having panic attacks, like because I felt like a dog locked in a cage, and it was driving me. Like I went into like, and what really saved me when I came back to my sanity, was that I did work in that field. So it was like I knew what I needed to do. Like basically, like once I snapped out of it, that's when I went into like everything I learned up to that point on, how to basically adapt and overcome to this, like, and all the self-care and coping skills. And like, I needed to keep myself distracted. My mind could not handle the gravity of everything when I did snap out of it. So it was like I did everything I could, like for a while, because it was just too much all at once. And I would just, I read my Bible. So like I read a lot, and I wrote a lot, and I exercised, and I cleaned, and like I just did things to keep my my head out of that. And the military obviously helped me a lot. And when I got released from jail, I was still homeless, and so I only had like literally the clothes on my back and one other shirt, which I gave away to someone who was leaving because it was January. It was middle of winter. It was cold.
Can I just rewind a little bit there, Brittany? So once you discharge you from the hospital, there's no welfare. They just like, see you later, mate. They don't put. Is that what it's like? They don't say, right, they're going to put you in a safe environment, get your house in, or anything like that.
No, they told me they'd give me an Uber wherever I wanted to go, wherever I needed to go. So I had them take me back to Enid, and they just dumped me off at a gas station.
It's like they've got no duty of care, aftercare. That's crazy. In England, if you go to prison, or especially if you're in a psych unit, they don't just let you out. You'll have like a support and social worker or support worker who's going to bring you back into society, give you housing, things like that. None of that. It was there's your Uber taxi. See you later.
My mom actually was telling them like don't release her. Like she's not okay yet. Like she was telling them, no, you need to keep her there, and they didn't listen to her, and they just let me out.
Do you think that's to do? I'm not sticking up for anyone, right? I'm just trying to understand it. Do you think that's because there's so much pressure on the services? There's not enough funding. They're like, we can't afford this. We need to get her out so we can get that room available for someone else. Is that the way it felt?
I don't think, like, for me, I didn't really blame them too much because it was very like, I was not like the typical, you know what I mean? Like most people don't come with a mental health background going in there. I mean, obviously there are, lots of mental health professionals who, get counseling and services themselves. But I think what did it for, I can understand why they thought I was okay, because I mean, even in their groups and everything, it was like I had all the right answers for all the questions they were asking, because I used to teach this stuff, myself. And so it was like they took that as me being okay and me being better because I knew exactly what to say to all their questions, so it was like I think because of that, they couldn't see, you know, the delusion. Like that gave them the impression that I was better and I was okay.
Yeah. So they're thinking, well, she's obviously smart. She knows she's getting all the answers right. She must be fine.
Right,
But
exactly. So it kind of didn't do me any favors
so
in
then,
that
so
situation.
right, you've got an Uber. So now you're out of the system. Okay. What happens next?
So that's when I was still in psychosis, and then that's when I ended up getting arrested, going to jail, all that. So then I get out of jail, and I'm still homeless. I had my mother like send me a phone and mail it to the jail, and I had her order me another bank card. So I at least had that, but I had no ID or anything because the first guy that
Yeah.
assaulted me had taken everything. So I
And
had
you,
that, but all I had was clothes on my back. So I was like, and it's the middle of winter. So I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Um, I finally found like a hotel that would let me stay there without having an ID. So I went there and I stayed there for as long as I could. I was still getting my VA disability on that card. And so that's kind of what I was surviving on.
so that's
But I could,
that's disability allowance because you'd suffer from a bad back. That was
right,
so that was a physical thing that you got from
right.
the army. Yeah. Okay.
So I I had that, but I mean, I couldn't stay in hotels long. That racks up pretty quick. So I ended up in a tent for a while, and then that's when I ended up, going. I went to jail, and then I came out. So when I came out, I got another tent, and I went
Can I
and
just
stayed in it.
rewind? Sorry, Bethany, Brittany. I just rewind because you just give like you went back to jail.
No, no, I'm talking
Oh,
about. So I had a tent before I went into jail,
right.
and then when I went to jail, I ended up in another one.
So now
Um,
you're in a tent. Okay. You've got an income, but that's for your disability, right?
right.
Okay. So you're in this tent, and this is still winter that this is
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah,
And
so I ended up finding a homeless shelter that was open, so I wasn't in the tent for long, thank God. So I ended up leaving the tent. I ended up in a homeless shelter that was open in town. I stayed there until they closed down in the spring because it's not open year round. So you can only stay there when it's cold, but you're not allowed to stay there in the daytime. So you're still outside freezing all day.
what would you do just so we can paint a picture? So throughout the day, what would you be doing? You obviously you're suffering because you're back as well, and you've got
So I got with my bank card, and my disability had been getting loaded onto that card the whole time I was incarcerated. So that was one of the good things about it. So I got a laptop, and I was like, I got to find a job. You know what I mean? Like I got to get back on my feet. So I got a laptop so that I could, submit job applications and things like that. So I'd go to the coffee shop every day. They would drop us off at this coffee shop downtown, and I would sit in that coffee shop and I would apply for jobs. And um, it was like because I couldn't find a job anywhere. I mean, I went from a college student, all these degrees, and a vet, and working in mental health to I couldn't even get a job at Walgreens as a cashier because of my background check now and them seeing that I had felony charges. So it was like I was having no luck um, with that. And it was like I went into a really dark place. I even talk in my book it like I left that jail that night. Like I was breathing, but I didn't feel like I was alive anymore. And it was kind of like that's when everything just it all got to be too much. I got real like hopeless after I like went on job interview after and nothing, you know what I mean? Like they'd meet me in the job interview and they'd be so excited, about offering me a job, and they'd send me like get a welcome letter and all this, and then they get the background check results back, and then they're like, nope, sorry, we can't because your background. So I was feeling pretty defeated and pretty just hopeless, and I'd lost everything. everything.
And on top of this, you've got a child as well.
Right.
So can I ask, was your little boy? Was he living with family members?
He was living with his dad,
Right. And
but he wouldn't allow me to see him.
right.
So I lost him too. And so that's when I got like really suicidal, and I decided like I just couldn't take it. Like, and if I lost my son and like he thinks all these horrible things about me now, like I didn't feel like there was any point to being here. And it was like I didn't necessarily want to die, but I didn't want to live either. You know, it was like I just wanted the pain of it all to stop. And that's when, like, a few months after I got released, you know, I'm still in the streets pretty much. And, you know, I'm running into people, and I ended up a few months afterwards, like, I met someone, and I'd kind of met them and known them for a while, and I knew they were into drugs, but I wasn't. So up until that point, like I was sober. And then one night they just threw a bag on the table and they kept telling me to do it. And I kept telling them no, like, you know, several times. I was like, no, like I can't. But then I thought about it, and I'd already been thinking about killing myself for a while. And I was like, well, this is how I'm going to do it. So I ended up relapsing. You know, I don't even know if it was really a relapse technically, because I wasn't doing it to get high. I was trying to overdose. So then I just tried getting my hands on anything I could at that point, and you know, I thought about my days, like all my years of sobriety, and then I thought to myself, it's not going to matter anymore, Brittany. You're going to be dead. You're just going to be dead. So what's the matter? And so then things got real worse from there, because then I get stopped one night and they find it on me. And so then I'm like back in jail. And at that point I had decided like I was gonna, it's like as soon as they got me in there, like I had made up my mind, like, okay, now I'm gonna hang myself. Like that's how I'm gonna do it now, since that's not. But then I was thinking, like, I was devastated too, because I was like, great, like now nobody's gonna believe me, you know, that I wasn't like on drugs when all that other stuff happened. But at that time, I wasn't even thinking in my head that I knew I had, you know, blood test results to prove that I wasn't. But still, like,
So
so then,
you were arrested for possession of, because you
right?
had, so you not intent to sell anything. It was just possession,
No.
and then you,
But so then, like, a miracle happened. So I'm thinking, like, this is it, right? Like, and I'm thinking, like, as soon as, like, I was in there with two other girls, and so I'm like, as soon as they get me alone in a cell, like, I'm gonna take my bed sheet and I'm gonna end this, because now it's even worse. And then a miracle happened, like, at that point, so I'd gotten off the street at that point. I hadn't been off the street very long. I ended up running into this lady, that someone from the streets, like, I had met knew. And so I had gone over there, with them to see her, and like she heard like what had happened to me and everything, and so she took me in off the street and she gave me a place to stay. So I was staying there when this happened. um and she didn't know like about my suicide attempts. Like I didn't ever tell her about that, but I'm sitting in that jail cell now, and thinking like I'm just gonna hang myself, and then the door swings open and the CO looks at me and she's like, "Get your stuff," like, because they had set my bond at $20,000. So I was like, "Yeah, there's no way I'm getting out of here." And like I thought, like I just kept thinking about myself, like now I'm going to prison, like I'm going to prison, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't go to prison. Like I won't. I couldn't handle that. So I was like, I'm not doing it. And like I thought that was gonna be my fate, So I was just gonna kill myself. But then they, tell me she tells me, "Get your stuff. Come on. You made bond." And I'm like in shock. And I'm like, you talking to me, like, because there was nobody I knew that was gonna, that I thought would do something like that. And it turned out it was her mom. And I had only met her like once, like the week before, briefly. And so, like, I just couldn't believe that this woman, she was a minister, her mom was a minister, but that I didn't even know, like, a stranger, like, would do something like that for me. But my roommate at that time, the lady that got me off the street, her mom, I guess, when she found out I was, like, locked up again, she like raced to her mom's house, and she was like just hysterical. She said she was telling her mom, like, "We gotta get her out of there. She's gonna die if we don't get her out of there." Because she knew, like, what a dark place I was in, and that I didn't. So her mom did it. She did it, and she got me out.
That's amazing that she could see something. And it was
Like
20.
a God moment for me, because
Yeah.
I was like, I wasn't gonna last. Like I'm sitting there, like thinking about my bed sheet. Now I'm gonna. I feel like if she saved my life, she really did.
So that's she did, didn't she? She interrupted the pattern because you were convinced that's what you were going to do, and then that happens, which is very rare that they've paid that bond to get you out. So now you're out. What happens next?
So I get out, and that was kind of like my wake up call. That was when I was like, okay, I'm not messing with this crap anymore. Like this isn't me. Like I felt so ashamed and of myself and so guilty for making that mistake. But I was in such a bad place. So then I get out, and she ends up having my roommate, she ends up having to leave for a couple of days for a conference and for work. And I'm like terrified that I'm going to be in this house by myself. And I was like freaking out about her leaving because, like, I didn't want to be alone in that house with all my thoughts.
Yeah, of course.
So while she was gone, I just I went down without having her there, and so it all just was just too much. And so then I get suicidal. And I'm like, well, I'm not going back to the drugs, you know, to try to kill myself with anymore. Lesson learned. Like, I'm getting away from that stuff. So I decided I was going to kill myself with like a bottle of sleeping pills. So I went out on the back porch of her house that night, that Saturday night, and I still have my suicide note, like, just, I don't know why, and I sat out there on that back porch for like, I don't know, it seemed like hours. It seemed like just looking up. And I was crying, and I was just begging God, like, just, I just want to die. Like, it's just... And so I finally, like, went to grab the bottle of pills. I was getting ready to take them, and before my hand even touched the bottle, like, I felt, this may sound crazy, you know, and I know I've actually been crazy, but I tell you, when I reached for that bottle, I felt someone grab my hand, my other hand, and it startled me. And so I turned to look, but there was nobody there, and I could feel it. And I just heard this, like, voice in my, I guess you'd say, in my spirit. I just heard, like, God say, not yet. And it gave me chills, like, it sent chills, like, I'd never experienced anything more real than that in my life.
I'm getting chills hearing that. I'm getting goosebumps.
I'm telling you, that moment, it was, you know, and I could feel God in that moment reminded me about the promise that I'd made to him. And I just sunk my head, and I just, even out loud, I was saying, you know, but how, you know, like, how am I, like, look at this. I mean, like, how am I ever gonna change this? Like, I'm nobody now. Like, I'm nothing. Like, I'm a felon, you know, like. But then it was kind of like, so then I sat out there for a long time. I finally got up. I went in the house, like, the sun was coming, like, which at that time, like, I wasn't sleeping at night. I couldn't sleep at night for months. Like, I had to sleep during the daytime. Like, I would wait till my roommate when she would go to bed, like, I would be up all night. I felt like I had to be up in case somebody came in the house. And so I would sleep during the day, and I went back in, and I put the pill bottle up before she got home, and I just went, you know. And I just started, you know, I think at some point, you know, that's when my suicide attempt stopped. I didn't try to commit suicide anymore after that, but I was, like, trying to figure out, like, you know, how am I going to do this? And I think at some point it was like I switched from, like, the depression, and that's when I got angry. Like, the depression and, like, the sadness turned from that to anger, you know, and then I was just mad. And And then that's when I remember I was sitting out on the front porch one day and I was thinking about, all this mess and like all the work I'd put in up to that point and all my degrees and like everything I'd worked for, my son, everything just, and I was like, I said in my book, like F those mother, it's kind of like the point I finally reached. I was so angry. And I was like, I made up in my mind, like, I am not going out like this.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I refuse to go out like this. I worked too hard, like for my life just to be ruined and over because of these cops, who just arrested me because I walked across the street. Literally, like I walked across the street.
Because you actually listening to your whole story from the first video and the second video, and you didn't do anything wrong at all. So you were purely arrested by the state of the state you were in,
Right.
and not even the first time. It was just a misdiagnosis from the police. They just assumed that you were on drugs, which you weren't. Oh God.
Now I'm in this and I'm like, okay, so that's when I started realizing, like, okay, I'm gonna fight this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fighting back, like, on this. I'm not just gonna sit down and take this. Um, so I ended up getting another attorney. This attorney actually got my evidence this time. He got the police reports, he got the medical records with the drug test results or the drug test results. And he even told me he sent an email to the DA's office and he told him, like, I wish I'd had her case from the beginning because we would have gone to trial and we would have won. So I'm waiting to go to court to try to straighten all this mess out. It gets passed over in the DA's office like 4 times. So each time they have to like start all over. And so it takes like a year for us to finally get to court. But I remember we came out of the courthouse one day and we were sitting on the steps of the courthouse. And he looked at me, and this is after he'd gotten all my evidence and everything. And he was like, Brittany, I just want to apologize to you as an attorney. He said, because the justice system completely failed you. And I just broke down crying when I heard him say that because it was like, finally, like, somebody's seen my evidence and they did, like, someone finally believes me. Like,
And what did that feel like then?
I mean,
Being proven that right, that someone's actually listening to you saying, right, everything you've experienced, they were wrong.
right,
Because you knew that all along. Really, you thought that they're not listening. They're not.
right.
They're not hearing me and what I'm trying to say. So for
And
someone,
they just, I was on drugs, so many
Yeah.
people looked at me, and it's like, I feel like I never even would have ended up using them just to try and overdose if all this hadn't happened to me. You know what I mean?
were you still living at that lady's house when this was all going through? Were you still staying there?
I was for a while. So we ended up I ended up getting with the VA. And they ended up like helping me get into my own housing. They had like a housing program for homeless veterans. So because when I had that suicide attempt, like when I was going to do that with sleeping pills, like that very next like morning, I called the VA and I told them, I said, you better get me into counseling. Like, I need to see somebody and I need to see him now. I said, because if I don't, I'm not going to be here much longer. Like, I knew I could handle all this by myself, you know? So the VA got me set up with counseling. And so I started going to counseling. They set me up with a counselor here in town. And so it was like, I started thinking in my head, you know, like, you just naturally, like, when you find yourself in situations, it's adapt and overcome. You know what I mean? Like, in the military, like, saved me too, because that's what gave me, like, that resiliency to keep pushing, like, forward, you know?
And, and what people aren't aware of, again, you have to watch the first and second video to sort of understand the full story. So you were experiencing trauma, and it doesn't just come and then it fades away. It was constant, like a loop. And your life before you joined, like you say, you joined the forces because you needed that structure, that discipline, not because you were out of control, but because you experienced trauma beforehand as well, and that just added to this like breakdown. But again, no one could see it, or no one was trained, or they were ignorant, or they weren't aware of it. Whatever it is, they had a duty of care, and they weren't picking up on it. But finally, it's now someone's listening. Now someone's saying, right, okay, you've got a case here,
Right.
which is a good thing. I know it's
Right. I'm so relieved, like, in that moment, you know? Like, it was just like, it was just like, I felt like I'd been, like, basically underwater that whole time, and, like, that was the first time, like, I felt like I finally came up for air when he said that to me. Like, it just overwhelmed me. I just started bawling, you know? And, so then we finally get to court. And I think as like a, CYA move to cover their own butts, they reviewed everything. They offered me a deal to where they were like, okay, well, if you do a year of mental health court, we'll dismiss your charges. At this point, I'm just sitting here and it's like, I'm mad. I'm not happy with it because I feel like, I'd already been in counseling a year up to that point on my own, getting help. And I was, already taking care, like trying, doing all these things. It's like, this is a year after the fact, like if you'd have done this back then when it was going on, that might have been one thing. But it's like, I feel like I'm mad because it's like, I feel like I shouldn't even be in this situation to begin with. Like, I shouldn't even have these charges. I shouldn't have to do mental health court. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'm just like, I'm so mad over it, and it's like you're on probation still as you're going through this. And so, and then I'm thinking to myself, like, you know what? Okay, fine. If I got to play their game for a year, I'll play their game for a year if it gets my charges and gets me my life back. You know what I mean? Like, I'll do whatever they want me to do. So I signed, for that. And that whole experience, I tell you, the lady that ran it was so unprofessional and just so unethical, and it was shocking to me. And then I got into like, I had to go see my PO, weekly at first, and then it was every other week, and I had to check in with him. And he was even, I mean, he was something. I remember when I came in there, like, he didn't believe anything. Like, he didn't believe I was in the military. He didn't believe I had all these college degrees. Like, he didn't believe what I told him about, like being assaulted and being in psychosis. Like, he assumed I was just on drugs like everybody else. So like, it was like, he didn't believe me.
And like when he heard the story, like, you know, when he asked me, like, you know, what I'm doing there and I'm explaining all this to him, it's like he was so like, you know, he's law enforcement. So it's like he's so back the blue over here, you know, and back the police. Like he just did not want to believe, I guess, like that his cops could screw up that bad. So it was like he wanted proof of everything. Like he wanted proof of my DD-214s, which I gave him. He wanted proof of my diplomas for all my degrees, which I gave him. I gave him the police reports from the assaults. He wanted to see those. I gave him the drug test or the blood test results from the mental health hospital, you know, where it showed I didn't have any drugs in my system when I went in psychosis. And it was like after he saw all that and I gave him all the proof, like that's when he believed me finally. And so then, like, you know, we would get in these conversations and I would tell him about how, like, I wanted to change this and everything. And it was like, I remember he told me, when, oh my God, I almost came across the table at him one day. I'm in there and we're talking about how messed up, you know, I'm telling him, you know, how messed up the situation is and how we need laws in place that require police officers to take people who are in distress like that to a mental health facility or a emergency room, not to jail until they can at least be stabilized, you know, and that we, you know, we need laws to protect these people's human and civil rights and how inhumane this all is and how traumatic it all is and how it's been going on for centuries that we've been locking up the mentally ill and it needs to stop. And he tells me, you know, well, you know, you got to understand here in Enid, you know, like if they get somebody like that and they take them up to St. Mary's, which is a hospital that we have here, he's like, you got to understand, like per the police department's policy, they have to stay with that person until they're released. So it's like that could be their whole shift. And he's like, you know, it's just easier for us to lock them up. And my jaw, I went from like 0 to 1,000 immediately in my head because oh my God. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, do you realize who you just said that to? It's just easier to lock me up, huh?
Mm.
That's it. It's just easier to lock me up, huh? What if that was your kid, though?
Mm.
Or you yourself? Then you still going to agree with that? You know, it's easier to lock them up. And I'm sitting here and I told him flat out. I said, so cry me an effing river. That's what I said to him, you know, because I'm sitting over here with my military, you know, background. And I'm like, whoop-de-doo. You got to sit there your whole shift. You know, like you're there to protect and serve. These people have clearly been deemed a danger to themselves or others. They need protection. You don't get to just do parts of your job that you like. You know what I mean? And these are human beings.
You're right. I had a friend, and he was a ex-prison guard, and I used to ask him, "What's it like working in a prison?" And he'd tell me all these stories. And one thing he always said, he goes, "Most of the people in here shouldn't be in here. They should be in mental hospitals." And I said, "So why aren't they?" And he's like, "I don't know. That's not my job. My job's just to run the prison." But again, like you said, it's easier to lock them up. But that's not the answer, is it?
I mean, and I said it, you know, I said in my book and I said it, you know, in my letters that I wrote to the Attorney General and the President and all this, you know, like jails and prisons do not rehabilitate people. They deteriorate people.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. Yeah, I hear that a lot.
I mean, it's the truth, you know, and it's like we're, especially here in the U.S., you know, like our prison system is so broken. And so, and the stats do not lie. Like our recidivism rates are you know, one of the highest in the world, you know what I mean? And it's like we clearly have a broken system. We know it's a broken system. It's not worked since the beginning, you know, and it's like, then you look over here and I talk about this in my book, you know, where I advocate that we need to switch over to a Norway prison system model. I mean, Norway has the lowest recidivism rates in the world. and their approach is entirely different from what we do over here. And I mean, they take a more rehabilitative approach. I mean, they have, their individual cells kind of resemble more dorm rooms than they do bar jail cells. I mean, they help them with life skills. They attend all these, classes and programs while they're there, and therapeutic, programs that they go through that help them with trauma and addiction and anger management. And it's like community based. It's built on, a mutual respect and understanding between them and the staff there. And their environment is completely different. It's designed to be, more, a more therapeutic environment for them. They've got, a lot of them have fitness centers and libraries and chapels, and they've got, all these things, music centers, and, they can get, job skills. And even it's been proven there that the inmates that go in there when they, unemployed, when they come out, they've seen a 40% increase in the employment rate among those inmates. And their, whole thought process there is that they want to set the inmates up for success after they leave and they're discharged, rather than just focus on, punitive measures and making life even more difficult for them when they get out. And so, I mean, it's been proven to have a positive impact, not on just their rate, but their economy. So, I mean, it's like, and the stats don't lie. You can't argue with numbers. And it's like, if it's been proven that this method is far more beneficial and has a much better impact all the way across the board, why are we not, to me, they're the leading standard in how prison systems should be run. And I think that the entire world needs to get on board, not just the U.S., but they take a more humane treatment of their inmates and a more actually rehabilitative approach than what's being done over here. And it's like, why are we not doing this? I mean, to me, this is common sense.
Right. So, devil's advocate, right? Because I here we have councils. It'd be the same sort of system. We have like a government, like you have a government, and then the government distributes certain amounts of wealth to certain parts of the country, and they have like councils, and then councils distribute to schools, hospitals, prisons, and things like that. So their argument is, you're right, and they're not stupid. They're like, this system ain't working, mate, because they're coming back and said, so let's do that therapeutic approach. Let's get them life skills. So that's the answer. So why aren't they doing it? And they said, because we haven't got enough money. The local authority aren't giving us the money to employ psychologists or extra activities and things like that. So that's their argument. Doesn't make it right, but that's what they're saying. So this goes higher, doesn't it, really? Because we all pay taxes. I'm not being funny. We get taxed a fortune. So,
well, it's down to me too. Like, this piece of paper that we call money is going to be our direction, because that's what it all comes down to, is the money and the fund.
Budgets and money, yeah.
I mean, and it's like they care more about a piece of paper than they do the people. And I mean, they care more. I mean, which one are you more concerned about, a piece of paper or public safety?
You would like to think public safety, but the people who control it, these are finances people. So in there, that's why a lot of companies and councils, they outsource private companies. So the prison you're in probably isn't owned by the government. It's probably a private company. So it's a business, and they'll say to local authority, for us to hold one of your prisoners, it's $2,000 a week or whatever it is, and it won't be cheap. So it would be wiser for the local authority to build their own prison. But their answer to that is, well, we don't know what we're doing, so we pay other people to do it, but they charge us an extreme amount of money, but it saves us face. Because I did a video about this. What is the role of local authority? Because what you're saying is right, and I think everyone agrees with you. The system's broken, even in the UK. It isn't working.
Right.
But they're saying, well, we haven't got enough money to fix it. But again, I
mean, it's just, it's just, I mean, but it's like, but if sometimes you gotta, it's kind of similar to that expression, you gotta spend money to make money. Because I mean, they talk about how much it costs to house an inmate, okay, but I mean, they're coming right back though. So it's just costing you more money each time they come back. So why not just come and then get them out of there? This is a better long-term solution. Then you're not, prisons aren't as full.
Another, their answer to that is because once they pay a company, that prison you were in was probably private. So because they paid them, the local authority say, well, we're not responsible now because we paid a company who provide that service. So if anything goes wrong, like your complaints, like you're saying it needs to be like this, the local authority will go, well, it's not on us. We pay an external company to do that. They're responsible, and that's why they do it, because it's if they're fully responsible, which they are, but they outsource it, so it creates a separation. In other words, well, it wasn't me. I didn't get it wrong. The prison did. We paid the money. That's what the council.
Federal and state prisons here too.
This is state ones as well, but they sometimes they call them state prisons, but I know in England most things are outsourced. It's like I tell you a story.
We have private prison, state prison, and federal prisons all here, in the U.S.
Right.
I mean,
so then, which door then do you think we should be knocking on? Because who's responsible? It's going to be the person who's in charge of the budget. Say, right, this is why you've got to speak to your politicians. And I'm not saying they're going to listen, but that's the job. That's what they get paid for. They're making all the decisions.
And that's what I did too. Like I wrote to I remember when I was going through mental health court and everything, and I was even talking to this PO that I had, and I was telling him how I wanted to change all of this and get the laws, new laws implemented to help protect these people's rights and all this. And he goes, well, that's nice and all that you want to do that, but I mean, you're never going to be able to accomplish anything that big. I mean, it might be best if you just try to stay and spread some awareness here in Enid and just keep it small. And like that just lit a fire in me. You know what I mean? It's like when you tell me I can't do something, and I sat there with like this evil genius grin on my face, and I just kind of looked at him and I told him, I looked right at him and I said, I don't know. I said, little old me going up against an entire system. I said, I kind of like my odds. And he just kind of looked at me kind of funny. And I was so serious. Oh my God. Like I was like, that's it. And so that's when I decided I was going to write a letter to the Attorney General. But, I was talking with my attorney about this, and he wanted me to do it. He actually suggested that I get a civil rights attorney out of Oklahoma City. And he was like, you should sue, them for what they did to you and file a civil suit against them. And, it was like, it took me a long time to like calm my anger down over what they've done and the damage and all that, especially with my son, like that wasn't something you just get over overnight. Obviously, I still have struggled, at times with it, but like I was trying to figure out a way, like, okay, how am I going to do this? Like, but then I was talking to him and he was like, don't do anything right now. Like, when you're done with your probation in this mental health court, get your charges dismissed and then do it. He's like, because you don't want to, piss anybody off while they've got you, basically,
I look at it this way because you've got.
We're going through this.
It's when we get into politics, it'll drive you mad because you can never win, right? We can't because we're not politicians. We don't make the decisions. We elect people who are supposed to do it. I look at it like this: it's a big club, and we ain't in it, right? And we can protest, we can shout, we can write, we can riot, we can say no. They're going to do it anyway. And you think, but that's not they're our government. We're not there. They work for us, don't they? Isn't that reality? I'm like, yeah. So why?
Even Abe Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, for the people.
And he got killed, didn't he?
Yeah, and now it's like it's all about the paper. In my mind, in my opinion, like that's all you ever hear about is, especially here in the U.S. It's all about every time you turn it on, it's just budgets this. Funding that, and it's like we're not really getting down to the root of the issue here. You can't just throw money at the problem, you know what I mean? Like expect it to go away, but it seems, and they're not even doing that. So I
I decided I was going to write to the Attorney General. The state Attorney General is who I
Yeah.
wrote to first. And so after I got out from underneath all that mess, and so I spent like 5 months working on that letter. It ended up being a little over 20 pages, 20 something pages long. But I knew like I had to be perfect, so I spent a lot of time going through that. And that letter that I wrote to him, which is the same letter, because I not only sent it to him because I didn't hear anything back from the state attorney general, I sent it to the U.S. attorney general. I actually got a response back from the U.S. attorney general. And he was basically, like, thank you for making us aware of this. I'm going to hand this over to the criminal division of the Justice Department. And, but nothing ever happened. Nothing really ever came out of it. No new laws were implemented, nothing, And so I went, after that is when I sent my letter, that same letter I sent to President Biden when he was in office. I actually got a letter back from President Biden, and both of these letters are in my book. So in my book, you can read the actual letter to the Attorney General that I sent. It's in there. And then I also have President Biden's letter in the book as well. So you can read exactly what President Biden wrote back to me. But pretty much his letter to me, when I read it, it didn't seem like he really got, it was like went over his head a little bit, I guess you could say, because he was like telling me, yes, mental health is like, a serious issue, here in our country, and it affects everyone, and we're giving $5 billion in funding towards mental health resources and all this stuff, and we're going to have more school counselors in our schools. And I'm reading it and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, but I didn't ask you about funding. I didn't say a word to you about funding. I didn't say anything to you about money. I didn't say anything to you about school counselors or any. I mean, like, that's all great and everything, but that's not what I wrote you about. I wrote you about like new laws being implemented that protect the human and civil rights of these people from being criminalized, penalized, and traumatized by the justice system. And for laws to be implemented that police are required to take people in a mental health crisis to a crisis unit or an emergency room to where they can be stabilized, before they just cart them off to jail. There also needs, in my opinion, there needs to be mental health professionals working side by side within our police departments. I mean, they need to have mental health professionals there on staff inside the police departments, because when people see these people out here on the sidewalk and they see them on the street and they see, like, look, this person's out of their mind, who do they call? The cops. So who deals with them? The cops. And they're not qualified to play counselor. They're just not, and it's like, I feel like they're very jaded by the people that they interact with on a daily basis. And I think they just assume that any person who's not right in their head is just high on drugs. And that's clearly not the case. And it's not up for them to determine that, because, I mean, in reality, until you can get them stabilized and see what's really going on with them, you can't, or drug test them. You don't know what the issue is, because a lot of these mental health symptoms mimic the same symptoms of drug use and drug addiction. So you can't really distinguish between the two just by, looking at it. And, summing it up in 5 minutes or less that, oh, this person is just high. Like, that's not right. And it's, to put somebody who is truly in a mental health crisis through that. I mean, I can, speak from personal experience. I'm telling you, it's like the worst. It's just, it's not right. It's insane. It's psychological torture, and people are being penalized for a chemical imbalance, or illness that's outside of their control. And just because, like, I said before, just because it's behavioral symptoms that you're witnessing and not physical symptoms that you're used to, they're still symptoms nonetheless. And it's like, I don't see you out here arresting people for having, high blood pressure. I mean, so why are they getting, arrested because they're mentally ill and you don't know how to handle it? We need more like CIT trained officers, crisis intervention trained officers within our police departments. And it's like, that's what I wrote him for. That's what my letter said. Like, and, you know, like, this is what needs to happen. And I wrote him even about prison reform and prison rehabilitation and all these things. I write about it in my book, you know, in the Norway prison system model. And it was like he just completely goes immediately to funding and the money and just totally irrelevant stuff that had nothing to do with what I wrote him about. So I didn't get anywhere with that really. But yeah, his letters in the book. And then, so Trump got in office and I was like, well, I'm thinking, well, I guess I'll wait for the next president to come along. So Trump gets in office. Not long after he's in office, I send the same letter that Biden and the Attorney General's got to him. No response. And it was funny because I sent a letter that I'd sent to them. I actually mailed a copy of it to the DA's office here in town, and he actually scanned it in. And all 27 pages, he scanned it in. He sent it to the police chief. He sent it to judges. He sent it to attorneys all over town. He sent it to the counselors over at the same people who were handling the mental health court program that I was in. They got a copy of it from him. So, I mean, he sent it out everywhere, but I never got a response from him either. I mean, I've never gotten anything, like even an apology. Nothing has ever... He never responded like back to me, but he just sent it out to everybody in town.
I want to. Can I just show you something actually on that note? If I can get it up, there it is. I don't know if you can see that. If it's come on the screen, I'll just make it bigger. This is like a famous quote by a doctor called Michael Elner, right? I'll just read that out to you, and this is great. This because it sort of sums things up. It says, just look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Universities destroy knowledge. And governments destroy freedom. The major media destroys information. And religions destroy spirituality. And it's true. Everything's upside down. Everything's backwards, isn't it? And that's the world we live in.
It is. And, it's like Albert Einstein said, the world's not a dangerous place, not because of the evil done by others, but because of people who look on and do nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, what government did. And honestly, I even sent my book to Trump back in November, and it was around the holidays. So I got a thank you holiday card back from him thanking me for my gift, which it wasn't a gift. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, they really... Are you kidding me right now? Like, it didn't come wrapped in a bow. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a cry for help. It's not a gift, but anyhow, so I still have not heard anything. It's like, it just completely goes ignored, which most of the time these people do go ignored, and they don't have a voice because they're not in their right mind, majority of the time, a lot of them. So it's like, who's going to be a voice for the voiceless, and it's like, I'm sitting here and I watch our government, and it's just like I keep shouting it from the rooftops. But it's just like they don't even see it.
Yeah.
And like, I never got a response back from Trump, and I still haven't yet. And another thing that aggravates me with that, and I'll just go ahead and say it, Trump does a lot, in our government right now, not just him, has done a lot throughout his presidency, talking about getting America back to being, a Christian nation and, a nation under God, and, back to those values and everything else, and preaching, all this, Christianity now, which is great, but it's like, you got to practice what you preach.
Yeah.
And to me, if you can receive information like this and like the letter I sent and just shut it off like it's, you never even saw it. That's not very Christian to me, and God has always been on the side of the oppressed.
They're aware of it. Like I say, will Donald Trump actually have saw that book? Probably not. He'll have staff, and them
but
staff.
Somebody read it, you know what I mean? Like somebody,
Someone should say,
the letter I sent, they have to read it.
I mean, it's a matter of national security. If they don't,
Yeah.
somebody sends a letter, you gotta know what it says. There could be threats in it or whatever. They have to check these things out. So
Yeah.
it's like, I know I probably didn't directly, and I knew that even with Biden, but
Mm.
I was like, I knew somebody, and I knew for a fact that the New York Publishing House president, Sam, over there, and New York Publishing House is the one who published my book. He was
Wow.
at the White House just weeks before my book got published, and he's had a conversation himself with Vice President J.D. Vance about my book before it even came out. So they knew it was coming. They knew, it's like they've been made aware.
Mm.
And it's just like, I don't understand how you can sit up and preach Christianity and then turn your back on all these oppressed people like they don't matter. Because they do matter.
By their fruits you shall know them. That's what it says.
Right.
By the
Well,
fruits.
I mean, even Voltaire says, he's one of my favorite quotes by him is, it's like every man is guilty of all the good he did not do.
That's true, though.
And it's so true, but it's like, I feel like I'm beating on, and I didn't just address the broken system of, law enforcement and police agencies and the prison system. I mean, I went into my book, I went into, all the systems that are broken. Like even here, our education system, I talk about it in my book. Honestly, like, I don't understand. We don't even have equal education in our country because a lot of school funding is still based on property taxes. Some schools and states have, gotten away from that and have made it more fair, but there's still a ton of states out there who still go by this. And so it's like, you've got the rich kids on this side of the tracks and they're getting iPads and the best of the best. And then you've got these kids over here who are, reading out of 80-year-old textbooks and stuff. And it's not equal education. I mean, because, you can't do it that way. And I talk about how, our property taxes have created this inequality within our education system. I mean, it should all go into one pot and it should get divided up. You get this much per student, and however many you got enrolled, this is what, you get per kid. And it should just be even across the board. And then I also talk our education system. I don't even understand why we're only measuring our children's intelligence quotient and their IQ quotient, their IQ. Why are we not measuring their EQ, their emotional quotient?
Yeah.
Why are we not measuring their RQ, like their resiliency quotient? Because you've got kids in school 8 hours a day and you're teaching them calculus and all this stuff that, half of it they're not even going to remember or use in life, but then they grow up and they don't have a clue how to be in a healthy relationship. They've never seen one modeled at home. They don't know how to function, and then they fall apart the first time that they hear somebody tell them no.
Yeah.
And it's, why are we not teaching them these things? I feel like we should have school counselors within our school systems teaching these kids, these are healthy coping skills. We should be having classes on this stuff.
Yeah.
And teaching things. This is what a healthy relationship looks like. This is how you bounce back from adversity. And I even say it, like, our schools should be adversity universities. They really should. We have to teach our kids, like, okay, life's going to knock you down.
Yeah.
And not all these kids get parents at home that teach them these kind of life skills and important. Like, if we're going to truly set them up for success, we can't just keep having tunnel vision only on their intelligence quotient. We need to be measuring their emotional quotient, and all these other things, and teaching them through like personal testimonies, motivational speakers. I mean, however you want to do it, how to bounce back, to inspire them, motivate them. You know what I'm saying? Like, these should be incorporated in our curriculum, in my opinion.
Because
this is what they're going to need in life.
Yeah.
Not just this that they're never going to use. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. It's like, if I knew nothing when I was 16. So what do you know? The thing is, like you said, this academic intelligence, when it's just memory, that's intelligence according to the school system. Read, remember, and repeat, and then you pass the exam. But emotional intelligence, it's completely different. And again, they don't teach that in schools. And if your parents aren't teaching it, you're in big trouble. Because you're going to go into the big wide world thinking, oh, I'm entitled to everything. And then you're going to get the shock of your life, because the reality is not like that. And it's getting worse, especially the rise of AI.
our suicide rates, our addiction rates, our divorce rates. I mean, what do you think they're all linked to? What do they all come back to?
Yeah. It's not.
I mean, it's just like, and I don't, it's like in my book, it's like I had to figure out how to survive that situation. And how I got through it. I mean, I lay a roadmap of that out. I mean, thank God, and I really feel like God put these things in my life because he knew at some point in my journey this was going to happen to me. And so it's like that's why I got put in the military. Everything started making sense to me after all of this, because like I would never have survived that. Like if I didn't have that instilled with me that you keep pushing it on, and it's like so when I got out of jail and I was in that dark place and I was suicidal and all these things, I had to figure out like how I was going to survive this. So I went back. I remember my first sergeant, and I put this in my book. My first sergeant, I was going through a lot of things from childhood trauma when I first gotten into the military, and he kind of took me under his wing and became my mentor. And he had sent me some YouTube videos, and I still have them. I mean, they were motivational speeches, is what he sent me. And he was like, I want you to promise me that every morning when you get ready for work, you're going to listen to these. You're going to listen to at least these or something like these. And so I did. And I promised him. And I mean, it pulled me out of my head and made me stronger. And I just started listening. And so when I ended up in this situation, that's what I went back to. That's what I pulled from. And I went back and I remembered those videos. And it was like, I was telling myself, like, I was in my head, all these negative voices telling me how, everything's over, it's hopeless, and I knew I could not listen to me in that moment and what I was telling myself, like those self-defeating belief systems that just consume us sometimes when life hits us and knocks us down, and it was like, I knew I couldn't listen to me. So when I was able to get headphones, I put those headphones in and I played those same, I know them by heart now. I'm probably 100 motivational speeches on YouTube by heart. That's how much because I still to this day do this because it was like, I can't listen to me. I got to listen to something else. If I'm going to pull myself out of this, like I knew from the military and my mental health background, it's mentality, right? You got to be headstrong and you've got to, and it's like, so how do I do that? Because right now, everything I'm telling myself is quit, give up, this is hopeless, kill yourself. So I had to start listening more, something more positive, something that was going to pull me out of that. And I didn't care how many times, if I had to listen to it all day or if I had to listen to it multiple times a day, when I started feeling myself go back into those dark places with all those negative voices, like that's what I had to know. I had to be cognizant of, where I was at mentally throughout the day, every day. And I think everybody has to do that. And so now even I tell my clients now, because I mean, I still work in mental health now. And so I tell my clients now, and I suggest this to them, that was one of my survival tools in that situation. And it's something as simple as a YouTube, video and speech. I would listen to Bible sermons, TD Jakes sermons, things like that. And that's what saved me. You know what I mean? Like that, I was all alone in that situation. There was nobody to help me. Like I was completely alone. So I had to figure this out. Like no one was going to come save me from myself, but me. And so till this morning, I tell my clients, I tell them, I was like, every morning I get up on my way to work, I still, or while I'm getting ready, I flip a speech on. I listen to a lot of Eric Thomas speeches and things like that, motivational David Goggins speeches and things. And I still do that to this day because I tell my clients even, I make sure I walk out of my house mentally armed and dangerous. Because I mean, I don't know about, I know a lot of people, the devil will come from my mind. I have so much trauma. Like he'll come for me before I even put my feet on the floor. And it's like, I have to do the same thing as I did back then. And I tell people too, I was in such a depression and I realized if you rearrange the letters in the word depression, it spells out, I pressed on.
Yeah.
And so I told my depression, I pressed on. That's what I had to tell my depression. I pressed on, And it's like you have to train your mind to be stronger than your emotions.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a very hard thing to do. And it's something that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Practice. It's all about
proactive.
reprogramming that old belief system. It's like a computer. That's what your brain's like. That's what computers are based on, the brain. So you've got that old condition, them old voices, them old programming, them old, which activate your emotional response to the thoughts that you have in your mind. So if you can sort of talk to yourself at an unconscious level by repetition, eventually your subconscious will start to accept it and then believe it. But you've got to do it every day. Like you said, you get complacent, that little voice in your head will kick in. Oh, so you've got to go, whoa, wait a minute. This is my old limiting belief system. So you've got to, again, listen to positive podcasts, things like that can help. I'll tell you, here's a good one. Bob Proctor. He's good. He died, but he's brilliant. Bob Proctor. And he explains it. Because I don't think it's about being positive. It's about thinking clearly and making right choices. So people think just be positive. And so, well, what does that mean? Isn't it about just thinking?
That negative thinking off, like that negative thing, you got to turn it off. You got to turn the volume down on that, and you got to turn something else on it, like somebody, I didn't have anybody. You have to become your own personal cheerleader, you know what I mean? And it's like, have anybody, to lean on or help. You got to figure it out. And it was like, I can't even express to you like how much that my Bible sermons, I mean, just that, like it really taught me that your mentality is everything, because you can't always control your outside external, circumstances. And that experience taught me that you never know what can happen to you. You never know what can happen to you, because I tell you, like, I never in a million, years thought this could happen to me, and it did. And you have to be ready for anything and everything. And I tell you, when I went into that psychosis, like, I've never experienced anything like that before in my life, and it terrified me to death when I came out of it. And I think it put the fear of God in me that could happen to me again. So it was like, that's why I think I'm so diligent about it, because
you're conscious of your own thoughts.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes in life you need another person to do it, because trying to do it yourself, it's quite difficult. It's like cutting your own hair. It's difficult. You can't see the back of it. So, but when you get someone else, that's why some people use external life coaches or people who really do know what they're talking about. But there's so many people out there who say, "Oh, I'm a life coach," and they're not really. But there's certain people in the world who've got life experiences like yourself. So, Brittany, where are you now in the world? What's going on in your world right now?
So now, it's like I'm really just trying to spread awareness about this. I ended up, after I didn't get, much of reaction from the government. Mental illness is not a crime.
No.
Mental illness is not a crime, but it is. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be, but it is. And that's the fact of it. That's got to change. And so it was like, okay, now that I'm not getting the government, which I don't understand how you can even sleep at night. But anyways, I wasn't getting anything from them. Haven't yet. I don't know if maybe somewhere down the road, I mean, Trump might do something about it, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I've been trying to get something changed with this for, that all happened to me 6 years ago. So probably like the last 4 years now. And so then it was like, okay, well, if this isn't working, I need to get the public's attention on this. I got to get the public's eye on this and just spread awareness about this and educate people as much as I can. And maybe it'll spread enough to where they'll, feel like they have to do something about it. So I decided I was going to take that letter that I had sent to them, and I mailed it to New York Publishing House. And a few weeks later, I got a call from New York Publishing House, and that's when I started writing my book. And I got done with it, and it came out in July of this past year. And so I've just been really trying to promote that and and just get some attention on it, because I mean, this is horrific to happen to any human being. And I mean, it happens every day, you know, not just to me, but to millions of people out there. And it's been happening for centuries. And this is not, it's inhumane. And these people's human and civil rights need to be protected. And our courts need to start, you know, having more compassion and leniency when they're reviewing cases like this. Because I mean, a lot of charges that the mentally ill end up with are minor charges, like, you know, disturbing the peace, like I said, trespassing, or they're, you know, and things like that. I feel like, you know, first of all, they should be taken, you know, to get help first. But I mean, charges like that should just be dropped, in my opinion. If someone is clearly in psychosis, you know what I'm saying, and not within reality, I mean, of course they're going to be disturbing the peace. I mean, if you've ever worked in a crisis unit, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to be disruptive. And I mean, they're not, or like even my situation where I ended up with, you know, assault and battery charges. I've just been assaulted twice. I'm in psychosis. When you reach down to yank me up off the ground and I start freaking out, screaming, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me, you know, yelling for good cops. It's like, that's a fight or flight response. You know what I mean? Obviously. And it's like, it's like our courts have to start looking more carefully at these cases. You know what I'm saying? It's like, say, okay, what were the circumstances surrounding this? What were they really, you know, and having some compassion towards these people, because this is something that's outside of their control. I mean, they're not arresting people for having high cholesterol. So, I mean, why are you arresting people for having mental illness just because the symptoms are different, but they're still freaking symptoms, you know? And it's like, what are we going to do about all these issues? And we're just, it's just like, we got to wake up.
I think that's what a lot of people are waking up now. I think, well, they are. You can see it. People are starting to think, wait a minute, they're not listening to us. That's why a lot of people in Britain, it's crazy now. People are rioting. Nobody trusts the government. Nobody. The royal family's collapsing. It's crazy, especially with this Epstein and Prince Andrew. That's not even his name now. People are really getting wound up now because they're like, we're being lied to and we're not having it. But Brittany, what's the name of your book? Can you just bring it up to the camera for us?
When Cops Try to Play Counselor, Mental Illness Becomes a Crime.
There you go, by Brittany Lawrence. Now the thing is, I know we've been talking for an hour and 40 minutes or so, but this is just the back end. If you watch the first and the second video, it goes through what happened and how you got to this point, and I'll put the link in the description below. But no, thanks for that. Really interesting. Again, if you want to get noticed, you've got to keep on persevering.
Right.
If you shout loud enough,
I'm not gonna stop, you know.
Yeah, don't stop.
I mean, I'll do this for the rest of my life if I have to. You know, some of my biggest heroes are like Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela. You know what I mean? It's like they all took their rejection and they turned it into revelation, and they took their pain and they turned it into a purpose. And I mean, none of them were perfect or polished either, you know. They were just simply willing, and you know, they took that private suffering and they were able to turn it into a public purpose that, you know, just saved and healed a nation. So it's like, we need more people like that today, you know, like that will stand up and be a voice for the voiceless, and you know, let our government know, like, we're not going to stand for this.
Yeah. And there's power in momentum as well, isn't there?
Right, yeah, power in numbers, you know, definitely.
Be willing to be disliked and tell the truth anyway. And that's basically, that's the only way you can do it. You got to remember, there's 7 billion people on this planet, and the people in power is a tiny 0.000%. If you do the maths, you're like, wait a minute, there's more of us than them. And I think when people wake up, like, oh, is it? Oh yeah, the odds are on our side. Yeah, we are the people that live on this planet. It's not the other way around. And again, it's something's happening. You can see big changes in the world, so there's a shift happening. I don't know if it's a spiritual thing, but something's definitely going on in the world. There's going to be a bang, and it's not. I think it's going to be a bit dark, but then it's just going to explode because the light's coming out, because people are waking up. And that's the thing to all this, isn't it? Wake up. But again, thank you very much, Brittany. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor. It really has.
I know, yeah. See, when you talk about something you're passionate about, you're good. But when you talk about the past, it's low vibration. Yeah, you get all sad. You want that positive energy because they hate that. They don't want you to be positive. They don't want that. They want you to be miserable because then they can control you. But when you're happy and you're high vibration, they don't want that because they can't connect to you. Right?
Yeah, as long as you're going along with everybody else and with all they're doing.
That's it. They fear love. Love is the most powerful thing. I know it sounds cheesy, but when you're coming from a place of love, they hate it because it's more powerful and they can't control it. So there you go. But again, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So there you go. There's Brittany. Woo! She's still there in the background, but interesting, isn't it? You've got to question things in life. Don't just accept things. Question everything. Everything. Because if you don't, you're just being ignorant. Oh, okay, you said that's the way it is. Okay, I'll accept it. We used to do that back in the day and look what trouble it got us into. But again, more people are waking up now thinking, wait a minute, I ain't happy with this, mate. I'm not having it. And once you've got that kind of attitude, when you start questioning things and challenging things, then things start to change. So that's what we've got to kind of remind ourselves, not to be complacent. Wake up, think. God gave you an intellect, which means you've got the ability to think. So think, don't just accept things. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, and learn to think for yourself, because if you don't, other people will think for you.